Let's bring now SABC's international news editor, Sophie Mokoena, as we look at SADC's extraordinary meeting in Harare, Zimbabwe this afternoon. Sophie, a very good afternoon to you. And of course, welcome to the show as we monitor these developments. I mean, there's been a number of significant developments ahead of this summit. Amongst those is Rwandan President Paul Kagame accusing the SADC mission in the DRC as being a belligerent force and specifically saying South Africa is in no position to take on the role of a peacemaker or mediator. As we unpack what we expect from the summit, it's also important to reflect on how big a role South Africa will continue to play.
Well, it will depend today in terms of the outcomes of the SADC heads of state and government meeting that's expected to start later today in Harare, Zimbabwe. We know that the president will be there with the Minister of International Relations and the Minister of Defense, of course, the minister in the presidency. And the decision that will be taken by this community of nations will give us an indication what is going to be South Africa's role. Because you know that there's what we call the Luanda process. In other words, a peace process that was negotiated or is being negotiated by the president of Angola. That peace process, that Luanda process, was given a thumbs up by the African Union. It has got the support of the African Union. And therefore, that process, it includes two processes. One, political, in terms of ensuring that all stakeholders are agreeing in terms of the peace process and cessation of hostilities. The other process is the deployment of this SADC contingent. Therefore, we expect a report from the chair of the organ on politics and defense, that is President Suluhu Hassan of Tanzania, that will give an indication what is going to happen to the Luanda process in relation to the deployment of SADC troops. But we know that it has become a problem for South Africa after those soldiers were killed in Sake. And the issue here is you have to ensure that you are able to bring back the remains of the South African soldiers who were killed. You are able to bring those who were injured to South Africa to receive better medical care. And the other thorny issue is what is going to happen to that contingent now that the M23 rebel is in charge of a huge area in the south, in the east.
And I mean, as we've said earlier on, South Africa and other SADC nations have been heavily criticized in terms of their role in the eastern parts of the DRC at least. Is there a possibility during this particular summit of a decision that will be taken that will see the withdrawal of the troops in the region? And how would that look like and unfold? I mean, what are some of the considerations here that they would need to look at?
You can't see an immediate withdrawal because you have to ensure that you evacuate those who are injured. You are able to repatriate the remains of the soldiers. Therefore, you need this contingent to do that work with the support of the United Nations. But you then have to consult the M23 rebels. South Africa will not be in a position to speak to them directly. They will have to continue to speak to Rwanda and the president of Rwanda. Much as we saw that war talk, they will continue to engage. Now, the other option, after you've done that, because this area now is in the hands of the M23 rebels, you can't be in that area. What will you be defending? What will you be doing in relation to your mandate when now this area has been taken over by the people that you were fighting with? Therefore, you will have to retreat. I think they will have to retreat to areas that are still under the government of the DRC, or they will have to go to Kinshasa, the capital, while there are discussions in terms of what needs to happen. And I spoke earlier on to the Minister of Communications of DRC, who indicated that for now, the soldiers are fine. Fine. Note, they are fine. But the question is, the area where they are they safe? We are told that it's not a good space where they are emotionally, physically, because they are confined in those bases and they are surrounded by M23 rebels. We're getting messages, some of them are sending messages to their relatives and friends, pleading for South Africa to do something. And therefore you can see that they are not in a good position. And therefore now they are talking to UN to persuade all stakeholders to ensure that you find a solution to this. I will be speaking to the spokesperson of the M23 rebels when I'm done here. And this is the question that I'm going to pose to him in terms of the guarantees, as we saw that ceasefire, whether it will hold so that you deal with these issues that I spoke about.
And Sophie, I'm being told that you are going to that interview now. In fact, we have to wrap our conversation, but it will be very interesting to hear what the M23 also has to say, considering that we've seen that the DRC government, at least, is not engaging with them at this point in time. But thank you so much for that update as we continue, of course, to look at developments within that SADC summit that is currently happening in Zimbabwe. Of course, that was SABC News' international news editor, Sophie Mokoena, there for us.